From the Scripps Studios, this is 10 News.
And good evening. I'm Steve Atkinson, joined remotely by my co-anchor Kimberly Hunt. We will be checking in with her shortly. But first, a scare for the Coast Guard as 3 of their detainees test positive for COVID-19, exposing over 60 Coast Guardsmen during a mission in the Eastern Pacific. As our 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo shows us, 67 Coast Guard members had to be tested for the virus today.
All of those tests came back negative this evening, despite the crew having spent over a week with those detainees on board. This is the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Active as it was leaving San Diego Thursday night after all crew members tested negative for COVID-19. The cutter docked in San Diego to unload a ton of cocaine seized in the Eastern Pacific. 3 suspected smugglers were detained off the coast of El Salvador and brought on board. The detainees spent 9 days on board the cutter as it made its way to San Diego, isolated from the Coast Guard crew as one detainee presented mild symptoms for the virus, and there were no COVID tests on board. Once in San Diego, all 3 detainees tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah, that's a pretty long time out at sea.
Holly Schaffner is a local retired U.S. Coast Guard lieutenant commander, describing how suspected smugglers are kept in custody on a cutter.
They're probably on a flight deck, and there's going to be a security team that's standing guard over them. So there's armed security that'll be watching them 24 hours a day around the clock.
Schaffner says the detainees aren't allowed on the interior of the ship, but says Coast Guardsmen would have contact with them. Despite that, all 67 crew members tested negative for COVID-19.
Yeah, I would say that it is surprising, and I would say the reason why is that there's lots of close quarters contact.
The amount of cocaine seized is worth roughly $37 million. The cutter is home ported in Washington State. In Coronado, Laura Acevedo, 10 News.
Also today, it is the first time since March that owners were able to welcome back customers into their restaurants. Just 24 hours ago, the tables and chairs sat empty at Draft South Mission and the Beach House. Kirsten has been serving there for 7 years and couldn't wait to get back to work. She says the waitstaff is doing everything possible to keep themselves and their customers safe.
A lot more hand washing. We have specific sanitizing teams that are going around and making sure that everything is constantly being wiped down and cleaned.
Other employees working today told us they are looking forward to seeing more customers over this Memorial Day weekend. San Diego's Westfield malls will be reopening soon as well. Westfield UTC, Mission Valley, North County, and Plaza Bonita malls. They will all reopen next Friday with modified hours. Each location will be open from 11 in the morning to 7 at night, Monday through Saturday, and 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. Each mall will also enforce face coverings and social distancing. They will also increase cleanings of all restrooms, play areas, dining areas, and water fountains. And while many San Diegans will be going back to work here in the next few days at those restaurants and retail stores, other industries still have to wait a little longer to reopen. Today, county leaders reiterated that the process is gradual. They'll have to wait and see how today's loosening of restrictions works out before moving to the next step.
And it's natural to understand that as soon as we take one step forward, there's an eagerness to take additional steps forward. And the simple reality is we are not there yet. We have just 12 hours away from getting the green light to move into stage 2. Most of those businesses are working on coming back online. The plan has been submitted to the state to move forward, and it's not surprising to hear a number of other industries who are ready to go and ready to move forward. But we need to take a pause. We need to successfully implement stage 2.
The county has asked the state for the go-ahead on moving into some parts of Phase 3, but has not yet gotten the answer from the governor. Here are the latest numbers. The county has reported another 175 cases today. That brings our total to just over 6,300. There were also 11 new deaths, bringing our total now to 241.
I saw some embers hit the hillside, and I said, oh my God, there's a fire down there right close.
A brush fire erupted just feet from their homes. That firefight happened along backyards in El Cerrito in an early sign of what's ahead this fire season. Our 10 News reporter Anthony Purra spoke with firefighters on the new challenges they now face because of this pandemic.
Firefighters say there will be times where they will have to go through neighborhoods and property to get to a fire. That creates some social distancing challenges, so they're asking for people's help and cooperation to keep everyone safe. Neighbors watched as flames devoured palm trees near their home. The fire started around 3:15 Thursday afternoon along Choyas Parkway near the Colony Village apartments, but it didn't stop there. Firefighters say embers flew nearly an eighth of a mile to these hillsides, sparking new flames. Sky 10 flew over to thick, billowing smoke as a chopper dropped water to stop the fire from reaching nearby homes.
It's only a matter of moments where it would have come up this hill right here.
Fire crews gained access into people's backyards to put out the flames, preventing damage to homes and property at both locations. San Diego firefighters say this is not new, but now it comes with the added challenge of keeping their distance from people in the neighborhoods.
So we ask the public to help us out. If you can get to a safe place across the street, down the road, what we ask is a little bit of help to help us maintain our social distancing, because sometimes we just can't do it, and we can't have our masks on because we're engaged in a firefight.
Battalion Chief Ted Moran says the pandemic has impacted training at some level, but it has not affected their readiness.
We're trying to limit the interaction between the crews. So yeah, it has somewhat hindered our training, but again, we're a well-trained organization. Little speed bump isn't going to stop us, and actually this week we picked back up with our training regiment, so crews are going to be ready when summer hits.
Firefighters say the cause of the fire is still under investigation. Anthony Pura, 10 News.
Unemployment in San Diego County is at an all-time high. According to Sandag, the jobless rate in our region is now 30%. As of March 9th, Logan Heights had the highest unemployment rate in the county at 42%. It was followed by the College area, Golden Hill, City Heights, and San Ysidro. 460,000 San Diegans have lost their jobs since March 7th, when this pandemic began. And a local church is continuing its fight to reopen. The South Bay Pentecostal Church is appealing a judge's ruling, upholding the order that churches must stay closed right now. The church's pastor says that they provide an essential service.
Basically, our lawsuit said what this letter said, that California has been discriminating against churches in their reopen plan. We should not be in the last stage. We should be in the first stage. Amen. We should be in the very first stage. We are first responders.
The church is pledging to reopen May 31st to observe Pentecost with or without permission. And with all 50 states now at least partially back open, experts are cautioning not to reopen too quickly. The rate of infection is still climbing in some places, and so are the unemployment numbers. And as ABC's Zoreen Shah reports, President Trump has a new message for businesses if a second wave hits.
As experts continue warning of a rise in infections, President Trump remained determined Thursday that another shutdown would not happen.
Whether it's an ember or a flame, we're going to put it out. But we're not closing our country.
CDC Director Robert Redfield says a second wave is coming. Dr. Anthony Fauci warning against relaxing restrictions too quickly.
Now is not the time to tempt fate.
Their warnings coming as states like Virginia, North Carolina, Minnesota, Arkansas, North Dakota, and Maine seeing more cases. Alabama with one of the sharpest upward trends, over 600 testing positive in the last day. Despite the spike in Hoover, nearly 400 students graduating while socially distancing. With every state at least partially back open, Columbia University now saying 2 out of 3 deaths could have been avoided if government officials had done more. The death rate much higher in places like the Bronx, where the poverty rate hits more than a quarter of households. The pressure mounting on some families there.
My husband is also an essential worker, and his shift has changed. He now works nights.
Many families worried about the growing unemployment numbers. Another 2.4 million Americans filing for unemployment in the last week, close to Houston's entire population, bringing the total number of unemployed close to 38 million since the pandemic started. President Trump on Thursday with a close eye on how businesses are adapting, visiting a Ford plant to building ventilators.
Today we're celebrating these great companies doing ventilators and other equipment, but we have a very, very specific plan.
He remained several feet apart from others, but chose not to wear a mask, even as others did.
Not necessary here. Well, everybody's been tested and I've been tested.
While President Trump was in Michigan today, Vice President Pence heading to Georgia tomorrow to talk to their governor, both election battleground states. Zoreen Shah, ABC News, Los Angeles.
The importance of creating a vaccine to defeat coronavirus is growing as our city begins to reopen. And today, Mayor Kevin Faulconer introduced several San Diego-based companies on the forefront of developing a vaccine. Inovio is one of those, and scientists there have been conducting human clinical trials since April to test a possible vaccine. The trickiest part is the coronavirus's ability to change and adapt.
We're very, very conscious of keeping an eye on those mutations, but so far they will not affect the vaccine that we've developed.
And Dr. Broderick says so far from what they've seen, their results are very encouraging.
34 people killed aboard a dive boat that caught fire off the coast of Santa Barbara died of smoke inhalation and suffered burns. That's according to a just released report by the coroner. The Conception caught fire and sunk in the middle of the night, Labor Day, killing 33 passengers and 1 crew member. 5 crew members survived. Investigators have said that all of those crew members were asleep when that fire started, despite Coast Guard regulations requiring a roving watch at night. A landmark move from the UC system. Today, the Board of Regents voted to drop the SAT and the ACT from admissions requirements. Students who apply to UC schools in the fall of 2021 and 22 will now have the option of submitting their scores. Then, for the 2 years after that, UC won't use the scores at all. In 2025, UC will either replace the SAT and the ACT with a new test of its own or eliminate testing altogether. After a year and a half of negotiations, a vote is finally scheduled on selling the stadium in Mission Valley to San Diego State. This afternoon, a city council scheduled to vote for a week from tomorrow. In 2018, San Diego voters approved selling the stadium and the land to the university. San Diego State plans to tear down the existing stadium to build a new one along with other campus facilities. Earlier this week, the Aztecs threatened to start playing outside of San Diego County if a deal was not reached soon.